Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome to I think episode 219. Yeah, I think we're on episode 219 of the Michael Lab Show. And I don't give enough thanks. I don't say thank you enough, even though I probably do it way too much. I probably do it too much. Um, but I was at work a couple days ago, and a couple people stopped at the front desk, and they just chatted with me. And great people, nice people, and they were just going on like they were just mentioning the podcast. And it's weird when you when you spend hours and hours and hours a week. I mean, literally hours a week. I mean, I talk for 40 minutes. It's an hour 20 right there. 2 podcasts a week, 40 minutes at least each time, sometimes 30 minutes like the last episode. And then each edit takes, I don't know, hour and a half for each. So about 4.5 hours, 4.5 hours times 52. I mean, whatever that is, 200 something, 208, right? 208 hours, maybe, divided by 20, 10. I don't know. So, I mean, like, it's a decent amount of time. It's about a week and a half worth of editing. You, at least for me, you kind of forget that people are listening in a weird way, right? And I think this is what happens when you create anything. If you're a writer, or if you're an artist like painting, or if you're an actor, or whatever you do, just even your job, like just your regular job, you forget that people. I guess it really wouldn't work as a job, but you forget that people are listening to you, and it doesn't it doesn't bother you, right? I don't think about it. I never think about, I never think about the people who, I honestly, I don't think about numbers. Like, I look probably once a week at the numbers, see if the podcast is doing well, see where it's doing, like, what's my demographic, what part of the world is listening to the podcast, what part of the country is listening to the podcast, what episodes are doing better than others. Should I keep on doing news, or should I read a book? So you kind of weigh the analytics, but I don't pay attention to it that much, as crazy as that sounds. So whenever there's a moment in the day or the week where somebody comes up to me and they just tell me, "Hey man, I really like the show. I like the show, and I like what you have to say, and I like, you seem like a smart guy. You seem like a person who enjoys conversation. You seem like a guy who's kind of um, who is easy to talk to. That means a lot. It's fascinating, because if you look at, and so thank you to anybody who's mentioned anything to me about my podcast, or has thanked me for the podcast, or has just told me good job. I enjoy what you do. I like listening to it. That means the world, and that's why I do it. That's why I do the podcast, and it's enjoyable, and I love it, and I appreciate everyone who listens to it. And it's even more odd for me, because I'm, growing up, I went into some files that we have here at the house, because I like to remind myself that my ability to, and this is for anybody out there, my ability to conversate, and my ability to talk, and my ability to look at a situation that might be very strongly debated, and my ability to break it down and look at it from multiple angles, is something that I've had to work on. It's not a skill. It was a little flame that I really had to work on. I was looking back at, like, my days in school, elementary school, and middle school, and preschool, and kindergarten, and, like, I was not an advanced student. Like, I was not average in communication, verbal skills, writing skills. I was below average. way below average. And I think at the time, it was upsetting, right? Because I knew as I was taught, I knew as I grew up and as I went longer through my life, I knew where I placed, and I could see the hierarchy, right? And I knew the things that I was not the best at. And it was upsetting, and I think this is a message for anybody. If there's a challenge, if there's a place in your skill set that maybe you don't excel in, if it's verbal communication or it's written communication or whatever it is. One second, guys. I need to fix this. Sorry about that. I'm a bit OCD. Oh my God, it's still not working. Jesus Christ, 1 second. I've probably lost everybody on this podcast. This is literally going to be an episode where I am just talking to myself. Because I've had like dead air. I've probably had like an accumulation of 10 seconds of dead air on this episode. But anyways, as I was saying, if you recognize your struggles and you recognize the things that you don't excel at, and things that if you look around, people around you are better at, don't just lean on your strengths. I think I know for me, I used to be in this mindset, like double down on what you're good at. And don't worry about the things you're bad at. But I think that's reversed. I think if you're proficient at something, you're naturally going to continue to get better at it, right? Because the only reason why you're good at something is because you found enjoyment in it. Otherwise, you wouldn't be good at it. Like I'm good at working out. I'm good at running because I enjoy doing those things. It doesn't take effort for me to do them. I just do them. I roll out of bed, and I feel like like today, Taylor and I are working out this evening, but part of my routine is I work out in the morning. We're working out back and shoulders this evening. So I decided to work out chest, right? Because I feel like I have to do something. And I recognized a long time ago, middle school, I recognized back in elementary school, actually, because I had to go to a speech therapist and I had to have a math tutor because I just was not able to pay attention. It's like, I'm not good at this. So I put it in the back of my head and I wanted to become better at it. But as I aged and as I got older and as I started getting into groups and I started seeing the separation of the hierarchy and then people who shared similar activities and similar skill sets started to separate and kind of go into own little sections, it made me sad and it made me depressed. And it made me think, well, I can't do that, And it wasn't until I was like 21, 22 where I really, I had a great conversation with Taylor, and it was basically like, hey man, you say you want this and you say you want that, but you're lazy and you're not doing anything to become better at reading, becoming better at talking, speaking, becoming better at writing. Like, you're not doing any steps to take. You just are saying that you want to do it. Like I always said, I want to make money. Like, money's always there. You just got to work for it. And I would say this, but I because I was too afraid to actually put in the work to become better with finances, to become better with my words, to become better with the vocab, to become better with writing. And it still seeps in every once in a while. I will say something wrong and I'll be like, I just made up my own word. But like in reality, I butchered what I was trying to say, and I'm not working on it. And that's laziness. And it was through her explaining that to me, I was like, we need to be an assassin. We need to have all the tools in our tool belt. And that's what allowed me to start really hard with this podcast. I was not a good speaker, right? And I started this podcast out of therapy, which is actually really fascinating. Like, I probably get new listeners every day, but this podcast was started out of therapy. It was an extension of therapy. I would go to therapy. I did it for about a year. And I talked for about an hour. And I loved it. I couldn't stop talking. I loved it. And I loved everything about it because I was looking for other people to give me solutions. But the thing is with therapy, you have the solutions. This world or the society or just you as a person, you don't allow yourself just to speak. And when you talk to yourself, you're crazy. So people don't do it. People don't take time to just reminisce on their thoughts and what they're thinking and what they're saying. And because people just act in such a spastic way that I came home and I was like, okay, I feel like I learned a lot in therapy. I feel like I got some really good points I can run away with, but how can I become better? And then that's what led me to the podcast. I was like, I can become more emotionally sound. I become better equipped. I can start understanding myself better. And hopefully, as I'm trying to do that, as I'm growing in that little pot, that little group of everything I just mentioned, maybe I can help other people. And that's where this was born in. So it's really nice when I hear people say, hey man, like, you've done a good job. Like, I like the podcast. And like, I've heard like, you started the podcast and I thought it was silly. And like, what are you doing? Like, why are you trying to follow this trend? But 219 episodes later, you can see the growth in it, right? Like maybe you don't see the physical change in it, like location wise, but that's because a lot of other things have been happening. Like when I started this podcast, I wasn't in school. I wasn't even planning on going back to school. I don't think I was in school. And now, if you've watched every episode, you can see my progression with what I thought about school, why I thought it was useless, then why I regretted what I thought. And then now I have a mutual agreement, a mutual feeling towards school. There's just a lot of growth in it. And I think that's very important for people. If you're out somewhere, you can see conversations with people who have been the same person their entire life. And that scares me. I don't want to be that person. I want to be, if I have a friend from high school or a family member, when they meet me, and this might be ego driven, I don't want them to be able to recognize me. I want to grow that much. I want to grow that much intellectually. I want to grow that much in relationships. I want to grow that much with critical thinking, critical analytics. I want to be a complicated human being. I want to think complicated things. I want to read as much as I physically can. Like literally right now, I want to make money so I can stop working and just read. Like education is by far the most powerful thing in the whole world. And the lack thereof, the lack of a quality education is the biggest attack on humanity that has ever existed. And I will argue with that to the day I die. Because what happens when you take somebody and you educate them, they become powerful. They now have the weapons. They can now think about what you're telling them to do and be like, that's not right. That's wrong. Your process of thinking is broken. Education is so powerful. It's a tool. There's a reason why, if you look at all the histories ever of humankind, that the peasants are uneducated. There's a reason why the people at the bottom of the caste system, of the Singbang, I think that was called in North Korea, the Singbang, there's a reason why they're not smart. Because if you take a person and you teach them how to think for themselves, and if you teach them critical analytical thinking, dude, it's done. It's done. You can't hold up a lie. You can't lie. You can't continue to lie to a populist. And so I encourage anybody out there who listens to this podcast, if it's just once a week or once a month or once a year, this is your first time listening to it, I want you to use this podcast and maybe be inspired, because I'm not like the brightest person, but there's this beautiful quote. I want to bring this quote up. It's by Robert Frost, and I'm pretty sure it's by Robert Frost. I just saw it on Instagram. Go ahead and delete this picture real quick. This is a dude from the gym. Okay, it's a beautiful quote. I love it. It's amazing. Let me pull it up real quick. I think I sent it to Taylor. Here you go. It's by Robert Frost. Education is the ability to listen to almost anything without losing your temper or your self-confidence. That is an amazing, amazing quote. It's so beautiful. It encompasses so much. Like, true education is the ability to listen to other people's opinions, other people's perspectives, and just be okay with it and not get rattled and not get angry. You see it all the time. You see it with politicians. You see it with people just having casual conversations. The moment someone feels like their toes are being stepped on, instead of just telling them, hey man, like, I agree with what you're saying, but I don't agree with what you're saying, but I understand where you're coming from, and I understand that perspective, and repeat what they said, and even go farther upon what they said. You know, know the other person's arguments better than they do. Stalemate them. That's a beautiful thing. You can have a great conversation that way, and then maybe you can educate yourself. Whenever you get your toe stepped on, don't kick the person. It doesn't do anything. It leads to war. It leads to argument. It leads to hatred. You can't have hatred. We have to move on from that. But education is the singular tool that can free anybody from anything. And the lack thereof is a huge disappointment. I watched this beautiful movie Sunday night with maybe Saturday night with Taylor. It's called Miss Virginia. And it's about this African American family, a single mother and a son. And the son goes to a school that is in the ghetto. It's in the hood, right? It's a horrible school. It's a public school system, and it's in Washington, D.C. And I was very fascinated by it because you know, my mother's from Riverdale, which is right outside of D.C. My dad's from Beltsville, which is right outside D.C. And these are both rougher areas, right? And this movie was based out of Washington, D.C. So at first I thought it was like literally out of those areas, but this movie is actually based out of like Washington, D.C. itself. And the basis of this movie is the lady who plays it is actually Crazy Eyes from Orange is the New Black, which was kind of hard to adapt to because Orange is the New Black is such a popular show and Crazy Eyes is such an iconic character. Anyways, this whole idea of the show is this lady, she's working 3 jobs, and she's putting in as much work as she possibly can. And she looks up to this politician. This politician works for the DC, and she's an African American lady too. So she kind of looks up to her. Like, this is a powerful woman. This is a powerful black woman that I want to be like, and I'm proud to say that she's my leader. It turns out she's a dirty politician, right? She takes money from the lobbyist. Not even dirty. She's just a politician, right? And the mom's whole goal is to get her kid out of the public school system because her kid is unique. You know, I think everybody is unique. I think a lot of people are just afraid to show off their uniqueness out of embarrassment. But so he's struggling in school. He's getting in fights. He's, started selling drugs, and but she can't afford to send her kid to private school, right? And it tears her apart, right? All she wants to do is send her kid to a better school. And it turns out, eventually, because to get a law passed in D.C., you have to go through like the nation's Senate and the nation's House of Representatives. Whereas, like, if you want to get a law passed, like in Maryland, you just go through like the delegate and like the local state government. But in D.C., you got to go through like the top guys, which is a lot more complicated, right? Because these people, they don't want to spend their time like working on the local area when they have a whole country to worry about. But, eventually she gets her kid through. She creates this fund for college, for kids in poverty. And the whole time I'm watching, I'm like, God, damn, Mike, like, you are just, like, you don't appreciate the access you have to education. Like, I just don't appreciate it. And that's something that I'm like, yo, that's embarrassing. Like, that's embarrassing, bro. Like, you don't know it's embarrassing, right? Like, I don't know it's embarrassing because I wasn't exposed to education for most people in this country. And if you just, even outside of this country, like anywhere, like if you see what's going on in Kabul right now, I don't think I'm saying that right. I feel like I'm saying that like such an American. But if you see what's going on in Afghanistan right now, when the Taliban leader comes out and says, we're going to treat these women equally with respect, but we're gonna do it the Islamic way or by Islamic law. You're like, these same people, the Taliban, who have sent out propaganda videos just chopping women's heads off, just chopping off Americans' heads, just murdering kids, just selling 12-year-old, 13-year-old girls to 40, 30, 50-year-old men, forcing them to get married, trafficking them, putting AK-47s in their hands and telling them to go shoot people, shoot the parents, kill the kids. Go put this vest on yourself and blow up the city, blow up this person. When you see these same people who are now saying that they are going to be peaceful, you like immediately go like, what are you talking about? You know, and like these people over there, what do they want more than anything? They want to be able to move around in a safe environment, but then they want education, right? They want to be smart. They want to be able to think for themselves, you know. And I think that is such a skill that I've taken for granted my entire life, and you know. It's upsetting, and you know, obviously you got to move on. I got to deal with that, and that's such a first world issue. But it is. I think basically what I'm trying to say here is, if you, and I'm ranting for 20 minutes about this, but basically what I'm trying to say is that if you have something that you are not that good at, recognize it and become a master in it. Just work so hard on on the flaws that you have. And don't be embarrassed by them, and don't look at them as weaknesses. Like, work hard, educate yourself, read a damn book, read. I don't care if it's fiction. I'm about to start Harry Potter. Like, I just finished a book by Yonami Park, In Order to Live, travels to North Korea. Before that, I read the Gulag Archipelago Part 1 and Part 2. I want to read Diplomacy by something Kissinger. Like, I just read. Don't stop reading, man. Just keep on reading until you can't read anymore. You know, and I think that's how we better the world. We educate people. We put books in their hands, and we not make them, but we ask them to read and then speak. Speak after you've accumulated facts and information, and speak when you can demand your words. Because if you can't demand your words, they will demand you, and then that will lead to chaos. Demanding your words is such a powerful thing to have. So that's that. I just think it's important. I think it's very important that that I understand my weaknesses, and I work hard on them, and I don't stop working on them, and I keep working on them. I think it's powerful. But that's that. Let me get away from that soppy story of mine. Have some water. My ice already melted. I really need to get what are those things called? Koozies? No, not koozies. There's things that go underneath of what goes underneath a drink? What's it called? Sauce? Something you put under your drink, huh? Coaster. I need to get a coaster. Coaster for drinks. A Heineken coaster for Oh, you can get custom coasters now for 1 cent. From customercoasters.com. Probably got to order like 1,000 of those suckers though. Pulp board. Ooh, stainless steel. I want the circle. Of course I want the circle. Color size. 4 inch is good. I'll take a 4 inch. 500. What's a 500? Do I want that gold though? I can't. How much are they? 500 for $1,690. How much does that make each one? $1,690. $1,690 divided by 500. Each one's $338. That's nice, dude. CustomCoaster.com. What a cool company. They have so many. The gold is so nice, though. The silver is so nice. Leather coasters? Wait, why would you get leather coasters? That would ruin them. right? Because then they will. I don't think you want that. In my opinion, you don't want that. How much are those? 500 for. Oh, cheaper. A lot cheaper. September 3rd and get them for free. Anyways, I digest. I divert from the real issues at hand. But yeah, it's good to educate yourself. So that's that. What else is going on? So I have a hat on. There's a microologist. Is that his name? Microologist Paul Stamets. I think I already talked about him a little bit. I'm talking about it again though. Paul Stamets. He's an American mycologist. Mycologist. He's an American mycologist and entrepreneur who sells various mushroom products through his company. He's an author and advocate of medical fungi. So I have not read his book yet. He has 4 or 5 books, 8 books, 9 books. I guess his newest one is Fungi Perfecti Mushroom Funtime Activity Book. I don't know if he actually really has a book about mushrooms. Psilocybin Mushrooms of the World. So I guess he has that. But what is Paul Stamets? He has a hat made of mushrooms. But he's a big mushroom advocate. Right? And his one of the guys that he reads a lot of is Terrence McKenna. And I don't know how long you've been listening to this podcast, but I have his book right here. He has a book called Food of the Gods. And Terrence McKenna was a complicated thinker. He was a guy that was he was a complicated thinker, right? He thought outside of the box and he challenged traditional thought patterns. He's one of the guys who came up with the idea of a stoned ape theory, which is this idea that they call it the Great Leap Forward, I believe. I want to look it up. The Great Leap Forward. Nope, that's not what's called. The Great Leap Forward is the People's Republic of China. Okay, maybe that's not. Okay, yeah, the Great Leap. Okay, so the Great Leap Forward was bad. From Mao Zedong launched the campaign to reconstruct the company from a agrarian economy into a communist society. Okay, never mind. But there's this time period in about, I think, 2 million years, or I don't know, something less than that. The size of our brain tripled, tripled in size. And there's a lot of theories about this, throwing arm theory, the fire theory. Trying to think. Those are the 2 main ones I know of. And, it's an accumulation of a lot of things. The fire theory, you can break down food, you can cook it, less people die. You can eat more things because of fire. The chemicals break down a certain way that actually they help your brain. I'm so dumb. Throwing arm theory, you can now close the gap between animals. You can now hunt big game, deers, antelope, bison, anything that was running back where ancestors were. Spears, you could track them down. So you can hunt bigger animals. You didn't have to constantly scavenge. So that you could hunt big animals. You can get a few, knock them out, and you can be in one area for a number of months before you had to move again. So there's a lot of theories on it. This mushroom is huge. There's such a big mushroom here. But then there's a stoned ape theory, this idea that because of throwing arm theory, as we were tracking these animals down, we would follow them, right? Because they were food. They were shelter. They were warmth, the hides and stuff. As they die, or as they were pooping, our ancestors would go up behind them and pluck the mushrooms out of them. They would eat the mushrooms out of the poop. And a lot of this poop from these animals caused psychedelic trips, right? And a lot of these, and then there's theories about these psychedelic trips is where art was created. And not just art, but religion. And what religion does is, if anything, what religion has done in the past and currently still does in some cultures, is it brings people together. And if everyone has everyone has a understanding of one singular thing, there's a reason to do something, right? There's a meaning to do something. And if there's a meaning to do something, people will work harder. And then it will cultivate a relationship among people. And then there's even ideas this is where language could have came from. Language could have came from us taking mushrooms, speaking, Because what is language? Language is just it's a way that we connect what we think and what we feel with words. There's a word where what is it called? What is it called when two senses overlap? I think it's called overlap. Synesthesia is a fancy name for when you experience one of your senses through another. So, for example, you might hear the name Alex and see green. Or you might read the word street and taste citrus fruits. The word synesthesia has Greek roots. So, like, this idea of language, like, what is language? Language is basically, it's a mechanism for us to use sound to communicate our thoughts, right, at a much more efficient rate. If we didn't have words, I wouldn't be able to have longer conversation with people. I probably wouldn't be able to have multiple conversations going on at once. And I probably wouldn't be able to direct how I'm feeling at a very high efficient level. Lex Friedman was actually talking about this with Rogan, I think just a couple of days ago. He was saying this is why like Russian literature is so much more powerful. Or like when Russians speak, it's a lot more eloquent and they can get things across much easier. Because if you look at the United States, we're a baby country. And the pain and suffering that we have suffered is not nearly as much as the Russians have suffered through the 20th century, just alone the 20th century. From the end of the Tsar, from World War I, from World War II, from communist Russia, from, the USSR, Stalin, like, even now. Like, there's a lot of pain and suffering, the mass starvations, the killings, the gulags, just and this is why you get guys like Solzhenitsyn or Solzhenitsyn and Dostoevsky and Tolstoy. Like, this is why you get like these brilliant authors and these brilliant poets and these brilliant writers is out of this suffering. But because they have suffered for so long, their words have so much meaning to them. Like, one word can mean so many, the depth of it has so many meanings. Anyways, the stoned ape theory hypothesizes that words could have came from these psychedelic trips, right? And which came from a mushroom. Something that people just eat. Something that vegans act like are burgers. You just eat. And I think that's amazing. Like, the idea of language possibly coming from something that was in the ground. And then if you start looking at like mushrooms, like there's a documentary called Fantastic Fungi. It's a brilliant. It's one of my favorite documentaries, if not my favorite documentary of all time. It's with Paul Stamets. He talks about the stoned ape theory. He talks about his connection with mushrooms, why he enjoys mushrooms. He talks about this beautiful trip he had when he was like a high trip, not like a vacation trip. When he was on top of this tree and like it was lightning storming around him and he was high as hell. And he just had like this feeling of like this empowering feeling, like I'm connected to nature. I'm scared, but the thing that's holding me, because it's storming, he's on top of this hill. It's just a lightning storm everywhere, rain, thunder, everything. And he grips onto this tree and he's holding onto this tree and he realizes that he's connected to Earth. He's not just connected to Earth through the psychedelic trip from this mushroom that he took, which comes out of the ground. Like, the development of a mushroom is literally the connection of, it's crazy. A mushroom grows out of the ground, it grows off of decomposing things, decomposing plants, decomposing animals. So there's like, I mean, you can get really hippie-ish in it, but there's like memories, there's like connections of the earth from one life being passed into another. You eat that. You start seeing things, start feeling things, and so he literally has nature inside of his brain, and the thing that's holding him down and allowing him not to freak the hell out was this massive tree on top of a hill in the middle of nature that has roots that are dug into the ground, that ground has been there for millions of years. And he paints this beautiful picture about how these mushrooms not only just, they transfer chemicals, and trees almost use them as like a pathway to like baby trees. And like, depending on what tree they want to nurture the most, they use these I think microbials, I forget what the word is, but like these chemical pathways, like these pipes that are connected to mushrooms, and these mushrooms can release chemicals to these plants, allow them to grow more. From everything, from like you see what Johns Hopkins is doing with them, like to like cure oh sweet tornado watch, like what John Hopkins do with them for like PTSD, ADHD, anxiety, depression. There's a PhD at John Hopkins who says he was on Jordan Peter's podcast. He said 3/4 of the patients that I've had, he's been doing it for years, thousands and thousands of patients, say single-handedly that the mushroom trip, the psilocybin trip that they take, is the most like spiritual, influential moment they have in their entire life. Because if you think about it, we're constantly just distracted by nonsense. So thinking about being able to take a mushroom to just strip you away from your ego and allow you to start understanding the nature of this world that we live in, it's got to be empowering. And I will get there eventually. I just don't feel like I'm ready, and it's such an honor to do that I don't want to do it at this point in my life. I want to wait. I'm also scared too still. I also still think it's a crime in this state, which is mind-blowing. Like the idea that I can go to the store and buy a certain mushroom and eat it, but I can't eat a different mushroom that makes you feel good, is like crazy. Especially when there's alcohol that's anybody can just drink and get too drunk, get behind the wheel of a car and kill a whole family. It's mind-blowing. Don't even get me started with that. That's when like my freaking my liberal views come out, like raging like a tiger on the prairie. Like the war on drugs is a disgusting thing. Disgusting thing. It's horrible. I like my new little picture up here of Taylor and I. See, little happy people. I love that. That's my girl. So I bought some fungi perfecti. I had this hat right here. It's got a little dancing mushroom on it. And I also bought a shirt with a blue mushroom on it. I didn't want to wear both of them today because I just look like a walking billboard for them. And that's kind of crazy. So I'm just going to wear this, and then I'm probably going to wear my dancing, my happy mushroom next podcast, next Tuesday. But I'm just trying to be an advocate for mushrooms. I think they're really cool. I've been collecting them lately. I know this seems crazy. I seem like a crazy person, and trust me, there's people who have to live with me. So it's like, if you think it's bad, just imagine people have to live with me. But I am nuts. I've been collecting like fungi and mushrooms. I've been mushroom hunting lately with Taylor. She's such a good sport. I got one right here. She like goes out with me. Got one right there. I got this one, which is completely falling apart. I might have to get rid of it because it's completely falling apart. Right there. I got a stick, and then I got a bunch of other ones, but this is one I got from Sam's Club. So this is hilarious. Taylor texted me. She's like, hey, I love you. So I want to tell you this. I know you're an absolute nerd. You're a loser, but I love you. I'm like, okay, cool. I like where this is going. So she sent me she told me where huge mushrooms were growing after it was raining here. And I was like, okay, cool. And then I went to Sam's Club, and they're right up front, and I got this mushroom right here. Look at the size of this thing. That's so big. If you're not watching this on YouTube, you should watch this on YouTube. It's got like mold in it and stuff. But I just think it's so cool. I'm not going to eat it because it's probably not safe. But like somebody already cut down all those mushrooms that were there. I just think it's so cool. Like this thing literally grew overnight. Literally grew overnight. That's crazy to me. Like a whole plant just grew overnight. It's so soft and squishy. I don't know. I've never like really thought I was into mushrooms. I remember picking them up as a kid and like sniffing them, and like I didn't eat them because I knew like you shouldn't do that. But I'm hunting for mushrooms now. I think I might have completely lost it, but that's okay. I'm a strange one. So that's that. I don't really have too much to really get into. I just want to say thank you so much for everyone who's come up to me and said they enjoyed the podcast. I love doing it. I plan on doing it for a long time. I do plan on having guests eventually. Taylor and I are going to be moving in these next 6 months, and it's going to be exciting. And wherever I move, I want to move next to a campus, to a college, because I want to have conversations with professors, humanitarian departments, history departments, math departments. It would be so cool to have a math professor on. And just like, I want to know where they fell in love with math. Because math to me is beautiful. I love numbers. Numbers make sense. English doesn't make sense all the time, but numbers make sense to me all the time. If you don't get a number right, you're wrong. And if you're wrong, you need to try harder. I love that. It's like the one thing in the world where it's actually black and white. Like there's no, if you get the numbers wrong, the building falls. That's just what happens. I like that. I don't know. I like the gauntlet of that. It's aggressive, but I enjoy it. Yeah. So I definitely do want to eventually have like great conversations with professors, educated people, PhDs, and whatnot. But that's that, guys. I don't really have too much more to talk about. But if you guys enjoy the podcast, like I said, keep supporting, keep showing love. Tell a friend about it. Tell a family member about it. It's hot as hell in this room. I need to get out of here. I'm probably gonna have my parents on sooner than later. We'll see about that. Maybe my sister's coming home, so I might have her on the podcast. We'll see. We'll see who I have on. But definitely I'll put up another episode on Tuesday. But if you guys like this, comment, subscribe. You can donate on the podcast description below. Thank you so much for listening. I'll see you guys in episode 220 of the Michael Lab Show. Peace out. See you.